My name is Mabel, and I'm 68 years old. After my husband passed away 5 years ago, I continued living in our beautiful beachfront California home worth $5 million. I thought my relationship with my daughter Amanda and son in law James was solid and loving. That changed the day she forgot to hang up her phone. I heard their plans to put me in a nursing home, claiming I was confused. The betrayal cut deep. Before I share how I turned the tables on their scheme to sell my house from under me, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and like this video to support stories of older women who refuse to be discarded when they're no longer convenient. The morning sun streamed through my kitchen windows as I watered the herbs growing on my windowsill. The basil and mint my husband Robert had planted with me years ago still flourished. This kitchen, like the rest of our beachfront home, held 40 years of memories. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore provided a constant, soothing backdrop to my days. Since Robert died from heart failure 5 years ago, I'd settled into a comfortable routine. The house had been paid off decades earlier thanks to Robert's careful financial planning. He'd worked as a successful investment banker while I'd been a high school English teacher until retirement. We'd saved, invested wisely, and now at 68, I was financially stable and independent. Amanda, my 42-year-old daughter, lived 20 minutes away with her husband James and their two children, my grandchildren Sophie and Max, 10 and 8 years old. They visited every Sunday for dinner, a tradition we'd kept even after Robert passed. I loved cooking for them, making Robert's special roast beef or my famous lasagna that the grandkids adored. "Grandma, can you help me with my science project?" Sophie had asked just last Sunday, her blue eyes shining with excitement as she explained her plan to create a model of the solar system. "Of course, sweetheart. We can work on it next weekend." I'd told her already, planning how we could make the planets together. My relationship with Amanda had always been good, or so I thought. She was our only child, and Robert and I had given her everything we could. She'd followed in her father's footsteps, working in finance, while James was a marketing executive at a tech company. They lived comfortably in a nice neighborhood, though not as affluent as my beachfront property. I kept busy despite living alone. 3 times a week, I tended to my garden, growing vegetables and flowers that brightened the property. The garden club I belonged to met every Tuesday, and I volunteered at the local library, reading to children every Thursday. I walked 2 miles along the beach each morning, keeping myself fit and active. My friends Martha and Rachel often came over for coffee or wine on my deck overlooking the ocean. We'd talk about books from our reading club, share stories about our grandchildren, or reminisce about our younger days. "You're so lucky to have this view, Mabel," Martha had said during her last visit, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "I know," I'd replied. "Robert loved this place. He always said it was the best investment we ever made." I noticed the shift in Amanda and James's behavior about 6 months ago. It started with casual questions about my finances. "Mom, have you updated your will since Dad died?" Amanda had asked over dinner one night, her tone deliberately casual. "Do you have good health insurance coverage?" James inquired another time. Long-term care is so expensive these days. Their visits became more frequent, sometimes dropping by unannounced. I'd catch them whispering conversations that would stop when I entered the room. Once I found James in Robert's old office looking through financial documents in the filing cabinet. "Just helping you organize," he'd explained with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I ignored the uneasiness growing in my stomach. They were my family. Surely they had my best interests at heart. Amanda started commenting on small things. I'd forget, making a bigger deal of them than necessary. "Mom, you forgot we were coming for lunch today," she'd said one Saturday, though I was certain we'd planned dinner, not lunch. "You're wearing mismatched socks," James pointed out another time, chuckling as if it was a sign of something concerning rather than a simple oversight. They began offering to help with tasks I was perfectly capable of handling. James insisted on managing my investments, suggesting Robert's portfolio was outdated. Amanda wanted to handle my bills, claiming online banking would be too complicated for me. I politely declined their offers. Robert had taught me well how to manage our finances, and I was comfortable with the systems we'd put in place together. "I appreciate your concern," I told them, "but I'm doing just fine on my own." They exchanged glances I couldn't quite interpret. My grandchildren remained a bright spot in my life. Sophie loved baking cookies with me, and Max would spend hours showing me his video games, patiently teaching me how to play. They'd often stay overnight on weekends, sleeping in the rooms I'd decorated especially for them. Grandma, can we live here with you? Max had asked once. Your house is way cooler than ours. Your parents would miss you too much. I'd replied, touched by his innocent question. My neighbor Thomas, a widower like myself, occasionally joined us for dinner. He and Robert had been fishing buddies, and after Robert died, Thomas checked in on me regularly. Amanda seemed oddly disapproving of our friendship. Don't you think Thomas comes around too often? She asked, once her tone suggesting something inappropriate about our purely platonic relationship. He's a good friend, I'd replied firmly. Your father would be happy I'm not alone. As winter turned to spring, the frequency of Amanda and James's questions about my health increased. Have you been to the doctor lately? Amanda would ask, watching me closely as I moved around the kitchen. That cough sounds bad, James commented when I cleared my throat once during dinner. You seem tired, Mom. Are you sleeping okay? Amanda pressed despite my assurances that I was perfectly healthy. My annual checkup with Dr. Patterson had confirmed what I already knew. I was in excellent health for my age. Blood pressure, normal cholesterol under control, mind sharp. Whatever you're doing, keep it up, Dr. Patterson had told me. You're healthier than many of my patients 20 years younger. I told Amanda and James this, but they exchanged that look again. The one that made me increasingly uneasy. One evening, I overheard them talking on the deck while I was in the kitchen. The market for beachfront property has never been better, James was saying. This house has to be worth at least $5 million now. Mom doesn't need all this space, Amanda replied. It's really not safe for her to be here alone. I'd felt a chill despite the warm kitchen. Were they already thinking about my house? Planning what to do with it while I was still very much alive and well, I dismissed the thought as paranoia. They were my family. Amanda was my daughter, my only child. She wouldn't be plotting behind my back. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it would soon grow into something I could no longer ignore. It was a Tuesday afternoon in May when everything changed. I'd just returned from my garden club meeting where we'd discussed plans for the summer community garden. My arms were full of seed catalogs and notes when my phone rang. I set everything down on the kitchen counter and answered. Hello. Hi, Mom, it's me. Amanda's voice came through clearly. Just checking to see how you're doing today. I'm fine, honey. Just got back from garden club. We chatted for a few minutes about nothing in particular. She asked about my plans for the week, if I needed her to pick up anything from the store, the usual small talk. There was something slightly off about her tone of forced cheerfulness that didn't sound natural, but I dismissed it. Okay, Mom, I should go. Love you, she finally said. Love you too, sweetheart. I heard what sounded like her putting the phone down, but there was no disconnect click. I was about to hang up when I heard James's voice in the background. Did you talk to her? How did she sound? Same as usual, Amanda replied clearly, thinking she'd ended our call. She says she went to garden club, but who knows if that's true? She could have been wandering around confused for all we know. I froze, the phone still pressed to my ear. They were talking about me as if I were already senile. We need to move faster on this, James said, his voice serious. The real estate market is hot right now. That house sitting on beachfront property has to be worth at least $5 million, maybe more. I know, but we can't just kick her out, Amanda responded, though her tone lacked conviction. She's my mother. Look, we've talked about this. She's getting more confused. It's not safe for her to live alone in that big house. A nursing home is the best option for her. It's for her own good. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My own daughter was discussing putting me in a nursing home while they sold my house. My house that Robert and I had worked so hard for, where we'd raised Amanda, where we'd built our life together. The nursing home on Oak Street has a good reputation. Amanda said, her voice growing fainter as if she was moving away from the phone. We should go tour it again next week. Once we have her declared incompetent, we can get power of attorney, James continued. Then we can handle everything. The house, her investments, all of it. Do you think Dr. Simmons will help us? Mom's regular doctor wouldn't find anything wrong with her? Dr. Simmons owes me for helping his son get that internship. He'll write whatever evaluation we need. I could barely breathe. They were planning to have me declared incompetent. With a doctor who would lie about my mental state, I sank into a kitchen chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Once the house sells, we can finally afford that vacation home in Aspen, James said, excitement creeping into his voice. And the kids' college funds will be set. What about that trip to Japan next month? Amanda asked. Should we cancel it? No way. Everything's paid for, and it'll take time to get the paperwork sorted for your mom anyway. We'll go to Japan, have a great time, and when we get back, we can move forward with everything. I guess you're right. It's not like she's going anywhere. Their voices grew more distant, talking about their Japan itinerary. I finally found the strength to press the end call button on my phone. I sat at my kitchen table for what felt like hours, staring out at the ocean Robert and I had loved so much. The waves continued their endless cycle, crashing against the shore, receding, returning. The world hadn't stopped, even though mine felt like it had shattered. My own daughter thought I was confused, incompetent. She and her husband were planning to put me in a nursing home while they sold my home and used the money for vacation homes and who knows what else. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Tears finally came, hot and fast. I cried for the relationship I thought I had with my daughter. I cried for Robert, wishing he were here to hold me, to tell me what to do. I cried until there were no tears left. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my kitchen floor, anger replaced my sorrow. A cold, clear rage that pushed away the hurt and sharpened my thoughts. I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders, and made a decision. They thought I was a confused old woman who would be easy to manipulate. They thought wrong. If Amanda and James wanted to play games with my life and my home, they were about to learn that I was not a pawn to be sacrificed for their greed. I picked up my phone again, this time with purpose. The first call would be to my friend Rachel. Before retiring, she'd been a family law attorney. I needed to understand exactly where I stood legally and what options I had. As I dialed her number, a plan was already forming in my mind. Amanda and James had a surprise coming, but not the one they expected. The next morning, I sat across from Rachel at a small cafe 10 miles from my home, far enough away that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. I'd barely slept, replaying the conversation I'd overheard again and again in my mind. Rachel looked exactly as she always did, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the documents I'd brought. Unlike me, she'd come prepared with a legal pad full of notes and a determined expression. First things first, Rachel said, looking up from the property deed I'd found in Robert's files. This house is unquestionably yours, Mabel. Robert left everything to you in his will, which was properly executed and probated. Amanda has absolutely no legal right to sell your home. They mentioned having me declared incompetent, I said, my voice shaking slightly despite my efforts to stay calm. Getting power of attorney. Rachel's expression hardened. That's not easy to do, especially if you're clearly of sound mind. It would require medical evaluations from reputable doctors, not just some friend doing a favor. She tapped her pen against her notepad. The fact that they're planning to use a doctor who would falsify reports is deeply troubling. That's fraud, plain and simple. What should I do? Confront them. The thought made my stomach twist into knots. Not yet, Rachel advised. Right now, knowledge is your power. They don't know that you know. That gives you time to prepare. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You mentioned they're going to Japan next month. I nodded. For 3 weeks. Some luxury tour they've been planning for months. Perfect. Rachel's eyes gleamed with a strategist's calculation. That gives us time to put some countermeasures in place. First, I think you should consult with a specialist in elder law. While I know the basics, you need someone actively practicing who knows all the current statutes. By the end of our breakfast, Rachel had outlined several steps I needed to take immediately. First was an appointment with Frank Donovan, an elder law attorney she trusted completely. Next was a comprehensive medical examination with my regular doctor, plus a cognitive assessment from a respected neurologist documenting my mental acuity. Finally, a thorough review of all my financial documents, property records, and Robert's will. 2 days later, I sat in Frank Donovan's office surrounded by law books and family photos. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes and a reassuring manner. Based on everything you've told me and the documents you've provided, Mrs. Harrison, your legal position is quite strong, Frank said after reviewing my situation. The house is indisputably yours. Your husband's will was clear, and the property deed is in your name only. What about their plans to have me declared incompetent? That's a serious legal process, not something they can just arrange with a friendly doctor, Frank explained. The courts require extensive documentation and multiple professional opinions. With the medical evaluations we're arranging for you, we'll have solid evidence of your competence. So they can't force me into a nursing home? The fear that had been gnawing at me eased slightly. Not legally, no. You're of sound mind and body, capable of making your own decisions. He leaned forward, his expression grave. However, I am concerned about their apparent willingness to commit fraud. People who are prepared to go that far might try other tactics. We spent the next 2 hours outlining a comprehensive plan to protect me and my assets. Frank helped me update my will, specifically excluding Amanda and James from any inheritance and establishing a trust for my grandchildren that they couldn't touch. We drafted healthcare directives, making Rachel my healthcare proxy instead of Amanda. Most importantly, we discussed what to do about the house. Legally, you could simply stay put and refuse their machinations, Frank said. But given what you've told me about their plans, that puts you in a position of constantly having to defend yourself against their attempts to control your life. What are my alternatives? I asked. Frank smiled, a slight twinkle in his eye. Well, Mrs. Harrison, you could always sell the house yourself. The idea landed like a thunderclap. Of course. If the house was sold before they could implement their plan, their entire scheme would collapse. But where would I live? I wondered aloud. Anywhere you want, Frank replied. You'd have the proceeds from a $5 million sale. You could buy a comfortable condo, travel the world, set up trusts for your grandchildren. The important thing is that you would be making these decisions, not them. As I left Frank's office, I felt something I hadn't expected, a sense of power returning. For the first time since overhearing that devastating phone call, I wasn't just a victim. I had options. I had agency. My next stop was Dr. Patterson's office for a complete physical and cognitive assessment. The neurologist he referred me to, Dr. Eleanor Winters, administered a battery of tests the following week. Mrs. Harrison, your cognitive function is excellent for someone of any age, Dr. Winters told me afterward. Your memory, problem-solving skills, and mental acuity are all well above average for your age group. Could you put that in writing? I asked, with specifics. She looked curious but nodded. Of course. May I ask why? Insurance purposes, I said vaguely. Just want to have all my medical information in order. With my legal and medical documentation in place, I turned to the most challenging part of my plan, deciding what to do with my beloved home, the house where Robert and I had raised Amanda, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, where he'd taken his last breath in our bedroom overlooking the ocean. I stood on the deck that evening watching the sunset as I had thousands of times before. The familiar sound of waves crashing against the shore had always brought me peace. Would I really leave this place that held so much of my history, so much of my heart? But as the last rays of sun disappeared below the horizon, I realized something. The house, as special as it was, wasn't what mattered most. The memories would stay with me wherever I went. What mattered was my dignity, my independence, and teaching my daughter that I wouldn't be discarded like an inconvenient burden. The next morning, I called Sarah Johnson, a real estate agent who had worked with Robert years ago when we were considering downsizing before ultimately deciding to stay in our home. She remembered us and agreed to meet me for coffee that afternoon. I'll be honest, Mabel, Sarah said after I explained my situation carefully, omitting the most painful details about Amanda's betrayal. Your timing couldn't be better. The market for beachfront property in this area is red hot right now. With your location and the condition of your home, we could easily be looking at $5 million, possibly more. How quickly could we sell? I asked. Sarah raised an eyebrow. In a hurry. Let's just say I'm ready for a change and I'd like to move forward before I second-guess myself. With a property like yours, we could list it and likely have multiple offers within days, Sarah assured me. If you're serious, I can have a photographer at your house tomorrow and we can list by the end of the week. I took a deep breath. I'm serious. 3 days later, my house was officially on the market. True to Sarah's prediction, the offers started coming in immediately. By the weekend, we had 7 offers all over asking price. The highest came in at $5.2 million, all cash, from a tech executive and his wife, who had fallen in love with the property at first sight. Amanda and James were scheduled to leave for Japan in 10 days. I accepted the offer and pushed for a quick closing, citing my desire to move to a senior living community that had an opening. The buyers were flexible and agreed to close in 2 weeks, just days after Amanda and James would depart on their trip. I didn't tell Amanda or James about my plans. Our Sunday dinners continued as usual, though it took everything in me to act normally around them. I caught them exchanging those secret glances when they thought I wasn't looking, no doubt counting down the days until they could put their plan into action. "We'll bring you something special from Japan, Mom," Amanda said, as they were leaving after our last dinner before their trip. "That's nice, dear," I replied, giving her a hug that felt hollow. "Have a wonderful time. Don't worry about checking in, just enjoy yourselves." As soon as they were gone, I began the process of sorting through 40 years of accumulated possessions. Some items were packed to come with me to my new home, a beautiful 2-bedroom condo I'd purchased in a secure building downtown with a view of the city park. Other items, particularly those with special meaning, were carefully labeled for Sophie and Max to be given to them when they were older. The furniture would stay with the house as part of the sale, except for a few cherished pieces: Robert's desk, our bedroom set, the dining table where we'd shared so many family meals. These would come with me, connecting my past to my future. The day before closing, I wrote a letter to Amanda and James. I poured out everything I'd learned, how I'd overheard their plans, their betrayal, my hurt and disappointment. I included copies of my medical evaluations proving my competence and a transcript of their phone conversation that Rachel had helped me document. I explained that I had sold the house and moved, and that while I would always love Amanda as my daughter, our relationship would need to be rebuilt on a foundation of truth and respect, if that was even possible. I included a separate letter for Sophie and Max, assuring them of my love and providing them with my new address and phone number. I told them they were always welcome in my home and that none of what had happened was their fault. On closing day, I signed the final papers with a strange mix of sadness and triumph. The house was sold, the proceeds were safely deposited in my accounts. My new condo was furnished and ready. The last thing I did before leaving my beloved beachfront home for the final time was place both letters in an envelope and tape it to the front door, addressed simply to Amanda and James. As I drove away, watching the house grow smaller in my rearview mirror, I felt tears streaming down my face. I was leaving behind so much history, so many memories. But I was also leaving behind the naive trust that had almost cost me everything. I was driving toward a new life, one where I was firmly in control of my own destiny. Amanda and James would return from Japan in 2 weeks to find their plans completely upended, and I would be ready for whatever came next. In the days following the sale of my house, I settled into my new condo in downtown Harborview, just 15 miles from my old beachfront home, but worlds away in atmosphere. The building was modern and secure, with a doorman who greeted me by name and amenities like a gym, community room, and rooftop garden. My unit on the 12th floor offered panoramic views of the city park, below the mountains in the distance, and on clear days, a glimpse of the ocean I'd lived beside for so long. I'd chosen the space carefully, working with an interior designer to create a home that felt both familiar and fresh. Robert's desk sat in the second bedroom I'd converted to a home office. Our bedroom furniture fit perfectly in the master suite. The dining table, where we'd shared countless family meals, now overlooked the park through floor-to-ceiling windows. New pieces complemented the old, creating a space that honored my past while embracing my future. The walls were painted in soft blues and greens colors that reminded me of the ocean without being literal. Artwork I'd collected over the years hung alongside new pieces I'd purchased specifically for this space. My first visitor was Rachel, who arrived with a bottle of champagne the day after I moved in. "To new beginnings," she toasted as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the city in golden light. "And to showing those scheming kids that you're nobody's fool." I smiled, clinking my glass against hers. "I still can't believe I did it." "Sold the house, moved here, all of it." "Believe it," Rachel said firmly. "You're one of the strongest women I know, Mabel. Always have been. Robert would be so proud of you." The mention of Robert brought the expected pang of loss, but also a strange comfort. I did feel him with me in this new space, his practical wisdom guiding me as I navigated this unexpected chapter of my life. In the first week at my new home, I established routines that grounded me. Morning walks in the park replaced my beach strolls. I joined the condo's book club, which met in the community room every Thursday evening. I found a nearby garden center that offered container gardening classes perfect for my new balcony space. I met my neighbors, mostly professionals and other retirees, who valued the building's amenities and central location. There was Walter, a retired professor who lived across the hall and shared my love of classic literature. Maria and Sophia, a couple in their 50s, who worked in healthcare and invited me to their weekly poker night. George, a widower like myself who lived 2 floors down and offered to show me the best restaurants in the neighborhood. You're not at all what I expected when they said a new neighbor was moving in. George told me over coffee in the building's cafe. Most newcomers are young professionals or couples starting families. I'm breaking the mold, I replied with a smile, proving you can teach an old dog new tricks. Nothing old about you, he said with a wink that made me blush for the first time in years. I didn't tell my new friends the full story of why I'd moved. I simply said I was downsizing after my husband's passing, ready for a change of scenery and less maintenance. The truth was too painful, too personal to share with people I was just getting to know. I did, however, make an appointment with a therapist Dr. Patterson had recommended. Dr. Lydia Martinez specialized in helping older adults navigate major life transitions and family conflicts. What you're experiencing is a form of grief, Dr. Martinez told me during our first session, not just for the home you left behind, but for the relationship with your daughter you thought you had. Will it always hurt this much? I asked, tears threatening despite my best efforts to maintain composure. The pain will change over time, she said gently. Right now it's raw and immediate. Eventually, with work, it will become something you carry rather than something that threatens to overwhelm you. We established a weekly appointment schedule, giving me a safe space to process my feelings about Amanda's betrayal and my uncertain future relationship with her and James. Through all of this, I kept tabs on Amanda and James through social media. Their Japan trip looked picture perfect from the carefully curated photos they posted. Amanda posing in front of cherry blossoms. James sampling sushi at a renowned Tokyo restaurant, both of them exploring ancient temples and modern shopping districts. Looking at their smiling faces, no one would guess they were plotting to force their mother into a nursing home and sell her house from under her. The disconnect between their public image and private actions made me wonder how long they'd been wearing masks, presenting themselves as loving family members while harboring such callous plans. As their return date approached, my anxiety increased. I hired a private investigator, Michael Reeves, a former police detective recommended by Frank, my attorney. His assignment was simple: document Amanda and James's reaction when they returned home and discovered what had happened. I'll be discreet, Michael assured me. They won't know they're being observed, but I'll get photos and video of their arrival at the house. I need to see their faces, I told him. Need to know this was real. The day of their return arrived. According to their itinerary, which Amanda had shared with me before they left, their flight would land at 2 in the afternoon. Allowing for customs and the drive home, they should arrive at the house around 5. I tried to distract myself throughout the day. I attended a morning yoga class in the building's fitness center. I met Rachel for lunch at a new bistro she wanted to try. I even attempted to read, but found myself rereading the same paragraph over and over, unable to focus. At 4:30, my phone pinged with a text from Michael. In position, will update. I paced my condo, checking my phone every few minutes, jumping when it finally rang at 5:20. They're here, Michael said without preamble. Just pulled into the driveway. I sat down, suddenly lightheaded. Tell me everything. They got out of the car looking relaxed. Lots of luggage. They went to the front door, and the man, James, I'm assuming, tried to put his key in the lock. It didn't work. He tried again, looking confused. That's when the woman noticed the envelope on the door. She opened it, took out what looked like several pages. They both started reading. He paused, and I could hear the sound of a camera shutter clicking rapidly in the background. Their expressions changed immediately. Shock, disbelief. The woman, your daughter, started crying. The man looks angry. He's pacing now, running his hands through his hair. She's on her phone, looks like she's trying to call someone. Me, I said softly, even as my own phone began to ring with Amanda's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. They're arguing now, Michael continued. He's gesturing at the house at the letter. She's still crying, but she looks angry too. Now they're getting back in their car. Follow them, I asked. Already on it. I'll keep you updated. After hanging up, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from Amanda, 3 from James, and several text messages ranging from confusion to anger. Mom, where are you? What's going on? Call us immediately. This isn't funny, Mom. You had no right to sell the house. Please, we need to talk about this. I silenced my phone and set it aside. They would have to wait. I wasn't ready to speak with them yet, not while their betrayal was still so fresh, their plans to discard me still so vivid in my mind. Michael called again an hour later. They went to a hotel, the Marriott downtown. They're checked in now, still look pretty shaken up. Thank you, I said. Send me the photos when you can. Already emailed them. Will that be all, Mrs. Harrison? I thought for a moment. Yes. Thank you for your help. The photos arrived in my inbox minutes later. Seeing the shock and dismay on their faces provided a grim satisfaction that immediately gave way to sadness. How had we come to this? Amanda was my only child, the person I'd loved and nurtured from the moment she was born. Now we were essentially strangers locked in a conflict I'd never imagined possible. My phone continued to ring throughout the evening. Around 9, a new number appeared. I answered cautiously. Grandma? Sophie's voice came through small and confused. My heart clenched. Hi, sweetheart. How are you? Where are you? Mom and Dad said you moved, but they don't know where. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetie. I moved to a new place. A nice condo downtown. But why I loved our beach house? And why are Mom and Dad so upset? Mom's been crying and Dad keeps yelling on the phone. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults have disagreements about important things. Your mom and dad and I need to work some things out. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and I love you and Max very much. Can we come see you? I miss you. Of course you can, very soon. I left a letter for you and Max with my new address. Ask your mom about it. Okay, she paused. Grandma? Are you mad at Mom and Dad? The question, so innocent yet so perceptive, brought fresh tears to my eyes. It's complicated, Sophie, but everything will be okay, I promise. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights twinkle in the darkness. The conversation with Sophie had shaken me more than I expected. The children were innocent in all this. They shouldn't suffer because of their parents' actions. Somehow I needed to find a way forward that protected my relationship with them while establishing new boundaries with Amanda and James. The next morning, after a mostly sleepless night, I called Rachel for advice. They've been calling and texting non-stop, I told her. Sophie called too. She's confused and upset. That's to be expected, Rachel said. The question is, are you ready to talk to Amanda and James? Not really, but I can't avoid them forever, and I don't want to keep Sophie and Max in the middle of this. Then meet somewhere neutral, public, so they can't make a scene. Bring someone with you for support, and go in with clear boundaries about what you're willing to discuss and what you're not. I considered her advice. Will you come with me? Of course, just tell me when and where. I texted Amanda, I'm willing to meet tomorrow 11 a.m. Riverside Cafe. I'll have someone with me. Her response came immediately, we'll be there. The meeting was set. Now I just had to prepare myself to face my daughter and son-in-law, to look into the eyes of the people who had planned to discard me and somehow find a way forward. The Riverside Cafe sat on a bluff overlooking the same stretch of coastline visible from my former home, though from a different angle. I'd chosen it deliberately, a place familiar enough to be comfortable but public enough to prevent the confrontation from becoming too heated. Rachel and I arrived 20 minutes early, securing a table on the outdoor patio with a clear view of the parking lot so we could see Amanda and James arrive. Remember, you're in control here, Rachel reminded me as we sipped our coffee. You don't owe them explanations or apologies. If they become hostile or aggressive, we leave. Simple as that. I nodded, though my racing heart belied my outward calm. I'd spent hours preparing for this meeting, rehearsing what I wanted to say, anticipating their arguments and justifications. But now that the moment was approaching, all my careful preparations seemed inadequate. I spotted them the moment they pulled into the parking lot, Amanda's red SUV sliding into a space near the entrance. They sat in the car for several minutes, apparently having a discussion before finally emerging and walking toward the cafe. Amanda looked tired, her usual polished appearance somewhat diminished. James walked beside her, his posture tense, hand protectively at her back. They're here, I murmured to Rachel, who squeezed my hand reassuringly. They saw me as soon as they stepped onto the patio, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to a complex mix of emotions I couldn't quite read. Amanda hesitated, then approached our table, James close behind. "Mom," she said, her voice controlled but strained. "Thank you for meeting us." "Amanda, James." I nodded to each of them. "This is Rachel Turner. She's here as my friend and advisor." They exchanged brief greetings with Rachel before taking the seats across from us. A waiter appeared almost immediately to take their drink orders, providing a momentary respite from the tension. Once the waiter left, Amanda leaned forward. "Mom, what you did. I don't even know where to begin. How could you sell the house without telling us that was our family home?" "Was it?" I asked quietly. "Because from what I overheard, you and James had plans for that home that didn't include me living in it." Amanda's eyes widened in shock. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "What are you talking about?" Amanda asked, but the flicker of panic in her eyes told me she knew exactly what I meant. "You forgot to hang up the phone, Amanda," I said, maintaining steady eye contact with my daughter. "After you called to check on me last month, I heard everything. Your plans to have me declared incompetent, to put me in a nursing home, to sell my house for $5 million and use the money for your vacation home in Aspen and the children's college funds." The blood drained from Amanda's face. James's jaw tightened, his eyes darting from me to Rachel and back. "That's not—" "You misunderstood," Amanda stammered. "We were concerned about you. The house was too much for you to maintain alone. We were just discussing options. Options that involved a doctor who would falsify reports about my mental state," I asked. "Options that you discussed while planning your luxury trip to Japan." "Please don't insult my intelligence by lying to me now, Amanda. I heard everything." Their drinks arrived, creating another brief pause in the conversation. Neither Amanda nor James touched theirs. "It wasn't like that," James finally said, his voice low and defensive. "We were concerned about your well-being. You've been showing signs of confusion, forgetting things." "Really?" I opened my purse and withdrew a folder containing the medical and cognitive assessments I'd obtained. "Because according to Dr. Patterson and Dr. Winters, I'm in excellent health both physically and cognitively. My memory and problem-solving skills are above average for my age group." I slid the folder across the table. "Perhaps you'd like to review their findings." James didn't touch the folder. Amanda picked it up with trembling hands, flipping through the pages before setting it down again. "This doesn't change the fact that you sold our family home without any discussion." Amanda said, a note of accusation creeping into her voice. "Dad would never have wanted that. Your father wanted me to be happy and secure." I replied, my voice catching slightly at the mention of Robert. "He wouldn't have wanted me declared incompetent and shipped off to a nursing home while you sold our home out from under me." "We never said anything about selling the house," James insisted. "Actually, you did. I have a transcript of the entire conversation. Would you like me to read it to you? The part where you discussed using the proceeds for an Aspen vacation home was particularly enlightening." James's face flushed with anger. "You recorded us. Is that even legal?" Rachel spoke up for the first time. "When someone leaves an open phone line, there's no expectation of privacy. And yes, it's perfectly legal in this state." "This is ridiculous," James snapped. "You've blown a conversation out of context and used it to justify selling a family heirloom property." "A family heirloom that was legally mine to sell," I pointed out. "Just as it would have been legally mine to keep had my own daughter not been plotting behind my back to take it from me." Amanda's composure finally broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You don't understand. We were worried about you. The house was too big, too isolated. What if you fell? What if something happened and no one was there to help you?" "If that was truly your concern," I said gently, "you could have talked to me about it. We could have discussed options together as a family. Instead, you plan to have me declared incompetent. Do you have any idea how that feels to know your own child thinks so little of you?" "It wasn't like that," Amanda insisted, wiping at her tears. "We love you." "Love doesn't scheme and plot," I said. "Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't try to take away someone's autonomy and dignity." We fell into silence, the only sounds the gentle clinking of dishes from nearby tables and the distant crash of waves against the shore below. Where are you living now? Amanda finally asked, her voice small. I've purchased a condo downtown. It's lovely. Secure building amenities close to everything I need. I paused. I'd like to maintain my relationship with Sophie and Max. They're innocent in all this, and I love them dearly. Of course, Amanda said quickly. They've been asking about you. I left a letter for them explaining that I've moved, but that I still love them very much. I'd like to see them soon if that's possible. Amanda nodded, though James remained stony-faced beside her. I need time, I continued. This betrayal isn't something I can simply get over. If we're to have any relationship going forward, it needs to be built on honesty and respect. I won't be manipulated or controlled. What about the money from the house? James asked abruptly, earning a sharp look from Amanda. Rachel stiffened beside me, but I remained calm. His question only confirmed what I already knew about his priorities. The proceeds are secure, I said simply. I've established trusts for Sophie and Max's education. The rest is mine to live on and enjoy for whatever years I have left. But that house was Amanda's inheritance. James pressed. Her birthright. The house was mine and Robert's, I corrected him. Purchased with our money, maintained with our effort. It was never promised to Amanda, and certainly never intended to fund your lifestyle while I was still alive. James opened his mouth to argue further, but Amanda placed a restraining hand on his arm. Stop, James. Just stop. Another silence fell over our table, heavy with unspoken words and emotions. I checked my watch, deciding it was time to bring this difficult meeting to a close. I think we've said what needed to be said for now, I announced, gathering my purse. I'll be in touch about arrangements to see the children. Mom, wait, Amanda said as Rachel and I stood to leave. I'm sorry, I really am. We never meant to hurt you. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd brought into the world and raised with all the love I possessed. Despite everything, I still saw glimpses of the little girl who used to run to me with skinned knees and broken toys, trusting me to make everything better. Intent and impact are different things, Amanda, I said softly. Whatever you meant to do, the impact was devastating. It will take time for me to trust you again, if I ever can. With that, Rachel and I left the cafe, walking steadily to my car despite the trembling in my legs. Once inside, with the doors closed and privacy assured, I finally let the tears come sobbing as Rachel held me and murmured reassurances. You did beautifully, she said. Stood your ground, spoke your truth. I'm so proud of you. Eventually, the storm of emotion passed, leaving me drained but oddly peaceful. The confrontation I dreaded was over. I'd faced Amanda and James, said what needed to be said, and survived. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the same strength and dignity. As I drove Rachel home, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. You know, Mabel, there's something powerful about what you've done here. You didn't just protect yourself from their scheme. You reclaimed your life on your own terms. I considered her words, watching the familiar streets of our town pass by outside the window. I suppose I did. I agreed, though I never wanted it to come to this. Few of us get the lives we want, Rachel said wisely. But the best of us create lives we can be proud of, even from circumstances we never asked for. Her words stayed with me long after I'd dropped her at her house and returned to my condo. That night, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker against the darkening sky, I felt the first stirrings of something that had been absent since I'd overheard that fateful phone call. Not happiness exactly, but something adjacent to it. Perhaps it was pride or self-respect, or simply the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had faced betrayal and emerged stronger for it. Whatever tomorrow might bring with Amanda James and my grandchildren tonight, I was at peace with myself and my choices. It was enough for now. It would have to be. A month after my confrontation with Amanda and James, I sat in my condo's sunlit living room watching Sophie and Max build an elaborate Lego structure on my coffee table. It had taken 3 weeks of negotiation through Rachel to establish these visits, which now occurred every Saturday afternoon. James remained firmly opposed, but Amanda had eventually agreed, perhaps recognizing how close she'd come to losing her relationship with me entirely. Grandma, watch this, Max exclaimed, demonstrating how the tiny elevator in their Lego skyscraper could move up and down. At 8 years old, he showed the same mechanical aptitude Robert had possessed, figuring out how things worked through patient experimentation. That's amazing, sweetheart. I replied, genuinely impressed. You've thought of everything. Sophie, more subdued than her brother, but equally engaged in the project, looked up at me with her serious 10-year-old eyes. Do you like living here better than at the beach house, Grandma? The question caught me off guard. I'd been careful not to discuss the circumstances of my move with the children, wanting to shield them from the adult conflict surrounding it. It's different, I answered carefully. I miss the ocean sometimes, but I like being close to the park and all the interesting shops and restaurants, and I've made new friends in the building. Mom cried a lot when we came back from Japan. Sophie continued, her fingers still absently connecting Lego pieces. She and Dad had big fights. I heard them talking about you in the house. My heart sank. Despite our best efforts to protect them, children always knew when something was wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements. I said, choosing my words with care. Your mom and I are working through ours. The important thing is that we all still love you and Max very much. Are you mad at Mom? Max asked, looking up from his creation. Not mad exactly, I said, trying to be honest without burdening them. Sometimes people we love make choices we don't agree with. It can take time to figure out how to move forward. Like when I broke Dad's tablet but said Max did it. Sophie asked, a flash of guilt crossing her face. I suppressed a smile at this apparently undisclosed transgression. Something like that. It's about trust and honesty. When trust is broken, it takes time to rebuild it. The children seemed satisfied with this explanation and returned to their Lego project. I watched them work together, Sophie directing the overall design while Max handled the technical details, their cooperation natural and effortless in the way only siblings can manage. After the children left with Amanda, who'd picked them up with a strained politeness that was our new normal, I took a walk in the park across from my building. The early autumn air carried just a hint of coolness, a welcome change from the summer heat. Leaves were beginning to turn splashes of gold and red appearing among the green. I found a bench overlooking the duck pond and sat down watching families feed the ducks, couples strolling hand-in-hand, joggers circling the path. This park had become my new sanctuary, a place to think and reflect as the ocean had once been. The first month in my new home had passed more quickly than I'd expected. My days had found a comfortable rhythm. Morning walks in the park, coffee with new friends in the building's cafe, volunteering at the downtown library, weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez, dinners with Rachel or other friends, Saturday visits with Sophie and Max. My relationship with Amanda remained fraught with tension. Our interactions were limited to brief exchanges during children's pickups and drop-offs, polite but distant. James, I hadn't spoken to since our confrontation at the cafe. According to Amanda, he remained angry about the house sale, convinced I'd somehow cheated them out of their inheritance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their plan to force me into a nursing home and sell my house had backfired completely, leaving them with nothing but damaged relationships and shattered trust. Part of me, a small hurt, part I wasn't particularly proud of, felt they'd gotten exactly what they deserved. But the larger part of me, the mother who remembered Amanda's first steps, first words, first day of school, still grieved for what we'd lost. The easy companionship, the assumption of good intentions, the certainty that we were on the same side. Would we ever reclaim any of that? Dr. Martinez had been helping me work through these complex emotions during our weekly sessions. The path to forgiveness isn't linear, she'd told me during our most recent meeting. And forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean forgetting or allowing someone back into a position where they can hurt you again. Then what does it mean? I'd asked. It means releasing the hold that anger and hurt have on you, she'd explained. It's something you do for yourself, not for the person who harmed you. It frees you to move forward without being anchored to the past. As I sat in the park considering her words, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Amanda. Can we talk, just us, whenever you're ready? I stared at the message, feeling the familiar tightening in my chest that accompanied any contact with my daughter these days. Was I ready for another conversation? What could she possibly say that would make any difference? Yet something had shifted in me over these weeks of separation and reflection. The raw wound of betrayal had begun to scab over, still tender but no longer bleeding. Perhaps it was time to listen, if not yet to trust. I texted back, tomorrow, coffee at the building cafe, 10 a.m. Her response came immediately, I'll be there. Thank you. The next morning, I waited nervously in the cafe on the ground floor of my building. I'd chosen it deliberately, a space that was becoming mine, where I felt comfortable and secure. Amanda arrived precisely at 10, looking more like her old self than she had at our last meeting, though strain still showed around her eyes. "Thanks for agreeing to see me," she said as she sat down across from me, clutching her purse like a shield. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, not unkindly, but not offering unnecessary warmth either. She took a deep breath. "First, I want to apologize, really apologize, not just say the words. What James and I planned was wrong, completely wrong. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I'm ashamed of myself." I remained silent, letting her continue. "We told ourselves we were worried about you, and maybe that was part of it. But the truth is, we saw an opportunity. The house, the money it represented. We convinced ourselves we deserved it, that we'd use it better than you could." She looked down at her hands. "It was selfish and cruel, and I'm so sorry." "What about James?" I asked. "Does he share this new perspective?" Amanda's expression tightened. "James and I are having problems. He can't let go of his anger about the house, says you cheated us. I've tried to make him understand that it was never ours to begin with, that what we planned was wrong, but he won't listen." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. "Despite everything, I didn't wish my daughter an unhappy marriage." "The kids miss you," Amanda continued. "They love coming to see you. Sophie told me your building has a pool." "Yes, on the roof. I promised to take them swimming next time they visit, if that's all right with you." "Of course." She hesitated. "Mom, I know I've broken your trust. I know words aren't enough to fix what I did, but I want to try to rebuild our relationship, whatever that looks like now. You're my mother. I don't want to lose you." I studied my daughter's face, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity. All I saw was regret and hope, fragile but genuine. "It won't be quick or easy," I said finally. "Trust once broken is difficult to restore, but I'm willing to try for both our sakes, and especially for Sophie and Max." Relief washed over Amanda's features. "That's all I'm asking for, a chance." We spent the next hour talking more openly than we had in months, perhaps years. Amanda shared more about the difficulties in her marriage, how the house incident had exposed cracks that had been there all along. I told her about my new life, my new friends, my plans for the future. "I've set up college trusts for Sophie and Max," I explained. "A significant portion of the house proceeds went into them. They'll have what they need for any school they choose." "Mom, you didn't have to do that," Amanda said, tears welling in her eyes. "I wanted to. They're my grandchildren, and Robert would have wanted it that way." By the time we parted, something had shifted between us. The wall of hurt and anger had developed a small opening, not enough to let everything through, but a beginning. Over the following months, these careful conversations continued. Sometimes just Amanda and me, occasionally with the children present. James remained distant, declining to participate. I learned from Sophie that he had moved into the guest room of their house, a development that filled me with concern for my grandchildren's stability, but which I was careful not to comment on. Amanda and I established new boundaries and expectations. Weekly dinners at my condo, just the two of us, where we slowly rebuilt our relationship piece by piece. She started seeing her own therapist, working through issues that had contributed to her decision to betray me. I continued my sessions with Dr. Martinez, processing my lingering hurt and learning to open myself to the possibility of trust again. 6 months after selling my beachfront home, I invited Rachel over for dinner to celebrate my new life. "Look at this place," she said, admiring how I'd transformed the condo into a true home. "It suits you, Mabel. You seem happier than I've seen you in years." "I am." I realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. Not that I would have chosen this path, but now that I'm on it, I can appreciate where it's led me. "And Amanda?" Rachel asked, accepting the glass of wine I offered. "We're making progress," I said. "Slowly, she's filing for divorce from James. He never could accept what happened, kept blaming me instead of examining his own actions." "I'm sorry to hear that," Rachel said. "For the children's sake, if nothing else." They'll be all right. They're resilient and they know they're loved. I thought of how Sophie and Max had adapted to the changes in their lives, continuing to flourish despite the adult turmoil around them. Children often manage these things better than we expect. And what about you? Rachel asked. Any regrets about selling the house? I considered the question seriously. I miss the ocean sometimes. The sound of the waves, the salt air, but no regrets. That house was full of memories, but I've discovered the memories came with me. They're in here. I tapped my heart not in the walls or floors of a building. To new beginnings, Rachel said, raising her glass in a toast, and to the wisdom to recognize them when they're disguised as endings. I added, clinking my glass against hers. Later that night, after Rachel had gone home, I stood on my balcony looking out at the city lights. In the park below, the paths were illuminated by soft lamps, a few evening strollers enjoying the spring air. Above, stars peeked through the urban glow, the same stars that had shone over my beachfront home, over the house where Robert and I had raised Amanda, over all the chapters of my life. I thought about the journey of the past year, from the devastating betrayal to this moment of hard-won peace. The path had not been easy or straight. There had been days of doubt, nights of tears, moments when the hurt threatened to overwhelm me. But I had persevered one step at a time and found my way to a new life I could embrace. Amanda and I still had work to do, trust to rebuild, new patterns to establish. The children were adjusting to their parents' separation, finding stability in the consistent love of both parents and their grandmother. My new friends and activities filled my days with purpose and connection. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my power, my dignity, my right to determine my own future. No one would ever again try to discard me when I became inconvenient. I had made certain of that. As I turned to go inside, a sense of profound gratitude washed over me. Not for the betrayal that had set these events in motion, but for the strength I'd found within myself to respond to it. The strength to stand up, to say no, to forge a new path. The strength that had always been there, waiting for the moment when it would be needed most. In the end, the house that Amanda thought was hers had never been about the building itself or its monetary value. It had been about respect, autonomy, and the right to write the final chapters of my own story. In selling it, I hadn't lost my past. I'd secured my future, and that I realized as I closed the balcony door behind me was a victory worth celebrating. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect yourself from people you thought you could trust? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and self-discovery. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and rewrite your story. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to face whatever challenges come your way.